Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you all on these really frigid nights. We appreciate you coming out tonight and spending some time with us. We are kicking off another round of this. I say that to you, it's probably just kicking it off, but to me, it's another class of students to get to work with. So I'm really excited. I get really excited every January because it is kind of like a fresh start and getting to start with a new class. So tonight is our Hunterdon Central 11th grade college and career planning night. This is what I like to call the second of a three-part program series that we do at Central to prepare our students for the college and career planning process. So by a show of hands, does anybody remember attending our 9th and 10th grade early college planning night at some point in your student sophomore year or freshman year? Okay, wonderful. We actually just held that program last month. So we run that every year, catered to those two underclassmen groups where we really get things going and we talk about the early college and career planning process, what they can do as underclassmen. If you didn't attend that, you're not behind. I think sometimes parents think, I didn't go to that. What did I miss? What did we miss in the first 2 years? You're not behind. I really consider that almost like a luxury here at Central that we do that. It's done in response to the fact that we just simply have students who are thinking about this process in 9th or 10th grade. I will say when you really look at it holistically, kind of nationwide, when do students really start thinking about the college and career planning process, it typically is about the midpoint of junior year. Some of your children are going to be already thinking about this. Some you're wishing the fire would light a little heavier underneath them. But most are really starting to say, okay, I'm about halfway through my junior year. That is actually 14 school days away, if anyone's counting, will be our halfway point of the year, 14 school days. But this is really when we kick things off. So I welcome you all tonight to our 11th grade college and career planning night. A couple introductions. You're going to get a chance to hear from all of us, but I'm here at the bottom. I'm Jen Nectarline. I'm the college and career counselor here. I work mostly with our upperclassmen here. So this point of the year is when I shift my schedule a little bit and open up to start working with two classes. Up until now, all of my time has been devoted to our current senior class. It's been a busy 4+ months. Just to give you a little context, this time of year, they are very much in the throes of hearing back from the early rounds of schools, but they're also going to be starting a little bit of a quiet period, January, February into early March, where they're waiting on a lot of decisions to come in. So we try to keep them busy with scholarship applications and the reminder that many colleges want to see their mid-year grades. So we keep the senioritis hopefully at bay for a little bit longer, but we are absolutely moving through senior year swiftly. And you guys, though, know this team I'll introduce. You're going to hear from all of them. They're the counselors that have been with your students throughout their years. They're grade level counselors. So we've got Carly Isabella Murin, who newer to Central, but certainly not, because she's a graduate of Central. Carly's been here now for a little over a year. It was just about a year. So she's got the beginning of the alphabet. Jacqueline Devlin, who's here, right there in the middle of the alphabet, and Julie Blake carries the end of the alphabet. Oh, they're all waving. This is so sweet. They're all waving to their counselor. So the three of them, along with Mariana Cordova, cover the class. Mariana Cordova is our multi-language learner counselor. Her office is actually on the 910 campus, but she works with students in all grade levels of multi-languages. Danielle Zurawicki is our counseling supervisor, and that's really the team, along with a couple other people, a student assistance counselor, vice principal, secretary, nurse, that really cover the class of 2026. So once we get through next week and we complete our college planning group sessions with our juniors, and we kind of get ourselves situated into second semester, that's when I'll really start my work with the junior class and start taking appointments. I'll talk about that a little bit later, where I really dive in with them and start talking about this process. So we're going to cover a lot tonight. This is being taped, so I want to mention a couple of things. All of our programs at Central are taped. So right now we are on live stream. Hello, everybody at home. Thank you for tuning in. They're home warm, but we're not too bad in here. This isn't so bad. But those of you at home, and even those of you in the audience, at the bottom of every slide, you're going to see a shortened link. That link is something you can type into any of your browsers. It's not a code. It's not one of the things we photograph because our people at home need to capture it. But it allows our folks watching from home to ask questions questions as well. We'll take all questions at the end. We'll save about 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A, but that link can be put into your browser. It is absolutely case sensitive. So if it's not working for you, make sure all the right letters are capitalized and just plug that right into a browser. Those of you here live tonight, we'll certainly take your questions in person, but we'll kind of toggle between what comes through our forum and what's here. So I start all of my evening programs and I've been here for 17 years at Central, and I really love what I do. If you haven't grasped that yet or heard me speak, you're going to learn that in 90 minutes. I'm really passionate about this work, and I think a big driver of what we do here and how we've developed some of the programs that we have that have been successful for students is by really reviewing each year carefully. So, and this was a really big one for us because the class of 24, the students who are now freshmen in college or first year doing something outside of school, outside of high school, really opened our eyes to how our demographic is shifting a little bit at Hunterdon Central and what we need to do here to recognize that. So I open up all of my night programs with a recap of the year. I don't go quite into this much detail with our 9th and 10th grade early college planning night, but I do give them a taste of sort of what a class looks like at Central. And I think having a child who is a junior and really about to embark on this process, I think it's good for you to know and for you to see, is that visible? I'm going to make that a little bigger, for you to see, well, what does a class do here? Where do students go here? So what you have at the top is our graduating class from last year. So our class of 24, about 650 students with about 67% pursuing four-year college. So that's your packing up, going away, going off to four-year college. And while over 430 of them did that, and that's an astounding number, that was a decrease for us from the previous year. And it's been just around that high 60s% for probably about 3 or 4 years now. I don't anticipate it dipping much more, at least by what I can tell with this current senior class. But that is a number that's the lowest, at least in the 17 years that I've been here. A couple of things. Economically, I think our students are choosing pathways that just work for them better from a financial standpoint. Four-year college, if you can't tell by now or haven't done the research, or if you perhaps maybe this is your first or only child going through it, is wildly expensive. Four-year college is gotten pretty tough for a lot of families to afford. So I think a lot of our students are pursuing options that don't create a lot of debt for them. I also think that students are taking an opportunity to kind of do some discovery and figure out what they really want to do rather than spending $60,000, $70,000, or $80,000 a year to figure it out and realize it was the wrong choice. Our two-year college rate has stayed pretty consistent between 18 and 20% for quite a while. So how did we reach the 67? Well, the other percent is what shot up for us. So that was about 9 or 10% in previous years. That other percent, which encompasses all of our non-higher ed pathways, is where we're seeing the increase. So employment went from probably 15, 20 students pursuing it to now over 30. Trade and technical school, the military, students taking a gap year, taking an opportunity to travel, go abroad, just do something for a moment or year other than school. And so we are seeing these trends, and we're acting on that here at Central by creating more programming. We've been doing a lot of things for a couple years that were sort of spread out over the 2 semesters, but this year, for the first time, we put all of our programs that help our students who are pursuing non-college options into something new called Post-High School Pathways Week. We opened that up this fall in November to juniors and seniors, and we saw a nice number of juniors there. So you're here tonight probably because your child's thinking about four-year college or maybe community college, but if that changes, just know that we have representatives and experts and people that come in to represent all of these areas. We have business leaders here, military recruiters, trade and technical school representation from RBCC and Polytech, adult Polytech. So we have contacts and resources and the capability to help them navigate whatever pathway they're thinking. And just a little bit of data, because I'm a bit of a data geek when it comes to college admissions. I mean, early action, we're not going to dive too much in tonight to what all that means. We're going to get into that a little bit more in senior year, but they might be terms that your family's heard of. Filing an application early action means your son or daughters, they're on top of this process and they're filing applications in the beginning of their senior year year, typically by a deadline of November 1st. So that's a pretty busy 2 months to start their senior year. That is predominantly what a lot of our students do. They are able to do that here at Central because of the preparation we give them, because we're seeing them next week. We're going to see them all throughout the second semester in individual meetings. We're going to see our juniors again in the spring before they head out for summer. We're going to provide summer workshops. We're going to give them all the guides that a lot of high schools don't give out till like mid to late September. They're going to have it all in June. So that's why so many of our students are able to successfully apply early action to colleges and get it over with. And then you can just see the rest. This is what I think parents are interested in a lot, and even the students, is this next chart is going to show you last year which colleges got 5 or more of our students. So this is, and when you're talking about sending 436 students to college, 5 or more that's a nice little representation of Hunterdon Central. RVCC remains our #1 institution of higher education receiving our students. It's a 2-year institution, but when we jump down to 4-year, it remains at Rutgers, although Rutgers really spiked in selectivity. Actually, I shouldn't say spiked. They became more selective, so their selectivity rate actually went down. 57% admit rate is kind of low for us. That was because a direct result of Rutgers joining something called the Common Application, which is what our students primarily use to apply to college. When you join the Common App, you become a school that's simply easier to apply to, and they had almost a 60% increase in applications last year. So we're tracking that pretty carefully this year to see if that remains. Rutgers has become increasingly competitive to get into, our state university. But we are loaded with other great schools in this state. We have a lot of great options: TCNJ, Montclair, Rowan, just three to name. We have a couple great private school options, but this is where our students went in the class of 24. So you can see we had a big spike to TCNJ. We've never seen a number like that. I believe it was a direct result of the Rutgers outcomes. Rowan's pretty consistent, Montclair is consistent, and then we start to leave the state, look at some of our bigger schools. We'll see a couple little hot spots here, like Moravian, a small private school just over the border, received 8 of our students. Our students, for years have been heading south up to the Boston area, so on and so forth. So everything here is schools that received 5 or more of our students. And then we move down to more names that you certainly recognize, but these are schools last year that received 3 or 4 of our students. And a lot of the typical names we're used to, and then you'll see a couple in here like LSU, Loyola, Maryland. I'd say most of these are pretty on spot with each year. So this is our matriculation, and then we matriculated to 146 schools. That typically, at least in my years here, has hovered around 160s, 170s. So just a little less diversity, but still having a Hunterdon Central student at 146 campuses as a freshman right now is pretty awesome. So this is where we sent our students last year. So that is our snapshot of the year. Again, nothing totally outrageous. We like to track it. We think it's important to see where our students are going and see where we have representation. These are trends I like to talk about. I think it's important, obviously for senior parents to be on top of these things, but for junior parents as well as you embark on this process. So we know our high school enrollment is declining. We know that's going to be a direct effect on colleges who are taking in less students. But there's a couple things that are still making certain colleges selective, and that gets me into the next bullet. So post-pandemic, we are still very much experiencing the test optional piece. So in the pandemic, if you don't follow college admissions a lot, in short, when high schools were closed, test centers were closed. So there was no ability for students to take an SAT or ACT. So most colleges, and I say most, I'm talking like 99% of colleges went completely test optional for at least one cycle, at least 1 year. That's continued for a lot of schools. A lot of schools have said this worked for us. We're no longer going to require scores. They're going to be optional. Some schools since 2020, 2021 have pulled back and said we're going to go back to requiring scores. We need that standard measure from students. We need to see how you all perform on this standard test. But I still absolutely have seniors who've applied to a fully test optional list. They took the test, and we will encourage your students to take the test once, twice is ideal. There's students who take it more than that, and that's a very individual discussion, but then they'll use those scores in consultation with their counselor or myself as we move into senior year to determine if those scores should be sent to colleges. So the SAT should not make anyone crazy. It is a Saturday morning of their life. It is not the end-all be-all. It's not the deciding factor of whether or not they get in, and there's plenty of colleges that agree with that. So we'll we'll talk a little bit more about testing in a bit. But when you go test optional, you open up the door for students who are not great test takers to come and apply. So you open up this wider range of applicants and more applicants. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's easier to get in. It's not actually even harder to get in. You just have a lot more people to look at. And when you don't have that standard measure from that student, it doesn't mean they're at a disadvantage. It just means your eyes are going to be heavier on every other part of their application. So we remind our students, if you're applying test optional, that's fine. Then we're assuming your transcript's shining, or there's something else really strong in your application, because those scores, we'll tell students, I'm really transparent. Those scores are not helping you go test optional. And a lot of times it's because the transcript, the grades are all strong and the scores just aren't, and it's an imbalance. And if a school's test optional and offering them that favor to be test optional, we're going to pursue that. So, but there's still a lot of students that are applying to a lot of schools. Applications up, selectivity rates, I'm seeing fairly stable, but it's a little early to talk about that. You'll hear me talk about this a lot more in September at Senior College Planning Night, because we're in the midst of the cycle of the season. Like I said, last year you saw where our students went. There was nothing crazy that I saw. I do track students who submit and not submit scores and how they fare, especially at really selective schools, and we received no crazy surprises. I think we were so shocked by what happened with our own state university, where we typically would have seen a student of a certain profile get in, absolutely not get in. And those were really difficult conversations. So I feel like the situation at Rutgers, and I'm really open to talking about it, knowing that I'm taped and this can be seen anywhere because I'm very transparent with my conversations with Rutgers, that was completely unexpected. And to see students who I thought had an absolute chance of getting into Rutgers, New Brunswick not be admitted, it made for a challenging spring, for sure. So we're hoping that tapers off now that they're in the Common App for a full cycle and into their second. Where was I going? Costs. They're up. The costs are up. Like I said earlier, I think it's probably the primary reason why our students are pursuing community college or even non-college options. I cannot emphasize enough open dialogue between, especially now that we're talking about 11th graders, with parents and your junior student about what is affordable, what is manageable, and what you're willing to put forward and what might be expected of your student. We'll talk about this a little bit too in our student groups next week, but for parents, Mrs. Blake's gonna take this over, having gone through this process with her kids. She's got some really awesome advice on supporting your child through that, and we'll talk a little bit more about finances, but cost is up, and I think that's why we're seeing, not just at our high school, I talk to my colleagues at our peer high schools that perform very similar to us, and they're seeing the absolute same trends. So those are some trends, some things impacting, but I don't, we're not in a 2020 era anymore. I don't see anything really astounding that's going to happen for the class of 26. This current senior class really went through this process pretty seamlessly. Last year was tough between what happened with Rutgers, and if you follow anything in the world of money and the FAFSA, that was an absolute disaster of a rollout last year, but our seniors last year had to suffer from that. Our current seniors are moving through the FAFSA process far easier. Now it's a graduation requirement in New Jersey to complete the FAFSA or opt out, and you'll hear more information about that as we move forward. So those are some basic trends, but this is what we're here for tonight. That's my opening kind of spiel. But a reminder, if you're watching from home or just tuned in, at the bottom of every slide, we have a link for you to type that right into your browser if you want to submit a question that we'll answer at the end. Just keep in mind it is case sensitive. So this is the main question we get, and this is where we start. This is where we're going to start when we talk with our juniors next week. Tonight's program almost mirrors what we're going to do with our juniors next week, except we talk to them a little bit different. I see some of you out there. I know you're here, and I thank you for coming. But next week, we talk to our juniors a little bit different. The content we do is a little different. We do have them bring Chromebooks. They get onto SCORE. SCORE is our college and career planning software, which I'll show you tonight. But we start here. I open our program tonight, and I open our program with the students. This is an area that I really cover because I think this is really important to understand. So I start with a couple things. Knowledge, because I think knowledge is power. power in this process. If you just dive in head first and start looking at colleges with no idea what you're doing, I think it's going to be overwhelming and confusing. So I like for parents and for students to understand from our point of view and everything we've learned collectively as a department, what we know about how colleges review applications. When you know kind of how that end part of this works, which is applying and successfully submitting apps, and kind of pull backwards, you get a better understanding of how you need to present yourself. So I'll talk about that. I'll talk about how to research colleges and build a list, because that is where we start. People dive in, should we visit? Should we get letters of recommendation? What do we do about senior year schedule? And all these little nuts and bolts. We'll get to some of that tonight, and some of that will come later in the year for your juniors, and then information out to you. So I'm going to start right here. I think this is so important because it really makes, as you're driving to campuses, as you're talking around the dinner table or hoping your child will sit down with you and talk about this process, you have to keep these core pieces in mind. This is what schools are looking at. The vast majority of colleges are holistically reviewing students. There are going to be your schools that are so focused on numbers and so focused on grades and rigor and everything they've done academically, but these are whole children we're talking about. Holistic reviews are where we're at. So the first, the first three bullets are what I call the hard factors, the black and white. This is the stuff that once it's submitted, it is what it is. And I shouldn't even say once it's submitted, it is what it is now. The grades your students are earning, the overall marks they're getting in class, the cumulative weighted and unweighted GPA, the grades, the scores, the data, it is black and white. This is what we call hard factors. And this is the first thing that colleges look at. They look at the academic performance. Grades in courses and level of rigor matter more than anything else in this process. But the reality is not every student's going to have straight A's and a 4.0 taking AP classes. And that's unrealistic. It's completely unrealistic. And we have students all over the GPA spectrum here, all over. I'm like talking the wide spectrum, getting into great four-year colleges. It's going to be different for a student with a 4.2 weighted GPA and a student with a 2.2 GPA, but there are absolutely four-year colleges for all students. It's whether it's the right fit and it's the right appropriate pathway for them. But level of academic rigor is going to absolutely matter first. So here at Central, we offer an abundance of rigorous courses. They're not for every student. AP is not for every student. Honors is not for every student. STEM isn't for every student. Your student can be incredibly successful taking a college prep or even an academic curriculum and go to a four-year college and be successful there. The rigor matters for the student individually. So we're coming up in a couple weeks on senior year scheduling, and they're going to talk about that a little bit more. The rigor, I will just say this without raining on their parade, the rigor's got to be on the rise senior year. We're going to drill that in next week over and over, and there's still going to be students who take a senior year schedule with a couple things in there that keep it kind of loose and kind of fun, and I say that's not preparing you for what's going to come after that, which is higher education. So level of academic rigor is going to matter most in the review. Leveling up a little bit each year as appropriate for the individual student is really important. Ultimately, their grades, are we a student who got C's in freshman year but brought it to B's sophomore year and A minuses this year, but maybe the GPA just didn't move a whole lot? That upward trend is important. Upward trend is highly noticed by colleges even when GPA isn't moving a whole lot. And then, of course, if the student took the SATs and in consultation with their counselor or myself, determined that those were scores that were suitable and going to look strong with their college application as a whole, and they sent them, that's another really strong piece of data for a college to look at. So those first three bullets are hard data. This is what schools are looking at first. But this is not the only thing they're looking at. So then we get into what we call the soft factors. This is the stuff that's kind of moldable. So letters of recommendation. This will be the year that students verbally ask for letters of recommendation. We'll go into detail about how that's going to work, but those will support their application by the colleges that are willing to read them. Not all schools will take letters of recommendation, but the vast majority do. The college essay, that's a piece that is probably the only opportunity in the application for a student to have full control. They will be receiving prompts, essay prompts. There's 7 of them. This year, the 7 prompts were unchanged from last year. I don't know at this point. I don't anticipate major change, but one of those prompts is always topic of your choice. So our students can truly write anything they want. They will write one kind of master masterpiece. It's a 600 up to 650 word essay. And that college essay does get worked on. I don't think we have an essay slide tonight, so I'll just give you a little tidbit. It does get worked on in the majority of our English classes in junior year. I know our students taking AP Lang will do it after the AP exam. English 3 oftentimes works it in. There'll be information coming out from us about the college essay, but that is a soft factor, and that's the main part of this process where students have full control to tell their story. And then their activities, all the things they do when they're not at Hunterdon Central. So it could be something here, it could be a club, a sport, a volunteer effort, something they're doing with the high school, but equally as important are all the things they're doing that are totally unaffiliated with the high school. Family responsibilities, work, church, synagogue, everything that takes up time on a consistent basis outside of school will be part of their college applications. We are going to drill that home next week because as juniors, they don't always think of that. They think, I've got to be in a club, I've got to volunteer, I've got to work, I've got to do a sport. Those are the 4 main categories. It is so much more than that. There are students who do none of those things because they have to go home and help with their family responsibilities. And we'll talk a little bit more about activities, but that matters a lot. It really does. Demonstration of interest and the interview are not something every school looks at, but I keep them on here because there are schools that do take them seriously. You're going to see demonstrated interest matter a little bit more at smaller to medium-sized schools. A school like a Rutgers, an Ohio State, a Penn State, they're not ticking things how many times you visit because they're getting tons and tons of visitors and thousands of applications. So demonstrated interest is not going to be as important as it might be at a smaller school like a Fairfield University in Connecticut, which we know looks at demonstrated interest. So are you opening the emails and clicking on them? Are you signing up for the prospective list? Are you visiting their booth at the upcoming college fair, which we'll talk about? Did you visit campus? All of those things can start to add up for some of those schools. And then interviewing, I just think it's simply the power of the admissions staff at this point, which I know my colleagues and friends in admissions are spread thin. Not every school offers interviews. If they do, they'll make that pretty apparent on their website, and that can be a contributing factor. So that's a long list of things that colleges consider. There are going to absolutely be students super strong in some areas and weaker in others, and vice versa. It's like you probably look at this list and go, can we just be a little bit good in everything? Great, if you are. We're going to help you take that well-roundedness and build it into a great application. The students who are really strong in some areas, maybe it's academically, but don't have a lot of activities, well, we're going to look at your activities and see how we can blossom those on your college application. Then I actually have probably more students in the reverse. They are super busy outside of school. They're working 25, 30 hours a week, and they're just like, I'm good with B's. B's, maybe a C. I'm good with that. Can I get into 4-year college? I go, absolutely. We're going to polish this up. So packaging, that's what I call it, like really making their applications look strong is probably my favorite part of this process. And we work on that a lot through my Common App workshops in the summer, and we put out a very comprehensive guide on how to fill out the application. So that is all to come. This is what colleges are looking at. So we take that information and sit as a family and go, okay, where do we need to work in this next semester as juniors? We need to focus solely on grades. Do we need to keep up with the sports and activities? Do we try to do a little bit of everything? But ultimately, you want to work this part of the process into it, and that's starting to develop a list. I will say the vast majority of lists are going to develop out of just what's comfortable to you. The names you're throwing around the dining room table, what your nieces and nephews or your brothers and sisters, or if you went to college where you went, it's all just what's familiar. ESPN helps a lot with that too. National championships, things like that. That's where a kind of a core college list starts. What do we know when we're driving down 95 to the beach in the summer? What are those signs we're seeing? But you want to go beyond just what you know, and you really want to take a deep dive into this process. So here at Central, we use a program called SCORE. It looks like Squire, or I've heard a lot of variations. It is just SCORE, like you've scored a point. SCORE is a program that your students got introduced to in the winter of their freshman year. So all juniors have a SCORE account. How much they've used it is up to them. At this point, I wouldn't expect a whole lot, but starting next week, they're going to be reminded that it's there, and now it's going to be at the forefront of this process. I'll show you what SCORE is. It's our main college and career software. We're still only about 3 or 4 years into it. It's a phenomenal program. It's where they'll build their lists, it's where they'll organize all of that, but ultimately in senior year, it's the driving program that is going to take care of sending all of their supporting documents to colleges. Transcripts, letters of recommendation, reports from the high school, not the application. They're going to use the Common App, a different platform for that. But to have a completed college application, you need things from your high school. SCORE is the driver of that. So if they're like, oh, I went in, I played around, like, no, they need to get in. They need to get in and get comfortable with it. There is an app for it. It's on their book. We tell them, put on your bookmarks. If you're a junior, class of 26, and you are like, SCORE what? It's time to shift that and get into SCORE. So we'll really reiterate that next week. I'm going to show you a demo of it in a minute, but starting point of this process, like I said, it's what's familiar. It's taking it to the next level and doing some searches on SCORE, and it's starting to just throw names around. I am fine with a junior who's like, I have nothing. I have no schools in mind. I'm just starting at the starting point. I'm fine with a junior who's in a family. You guys have tossed around 25 names. It's fine to be in any of those areas. The goal is, by the end of this year, that they have some sort of working college list. And they're starting to move that list to a more formalized place like SCORE. Right now, it could just be in their head. It could be through searches on their phone. That's fine. That casual work is fine. And when we ask the juniors next week, and I've done this so many times now, I'll say, how many of you, so I'll do this slide, like, how many of you have, after I talk about a list, a working college list? And almost every hand will go up, because I'll tell them, I'm fine with your list just being up here right now. Because in their mind, as a junior, they might be thinking, yeah, Clemson, maybe I'll look at Delaware, Penn State sounds good, I'm staying in state, I want to do Rome, Montclair. That is a working college list. That is a great place to be as a junior right now, but we're going to teach them how to take that a step further. Ultimately, we want their list to be a healthy, even balance. It will take time to get to the second bullet. I do not expect a junior at the end of junior year to have an even number of probables, targets, and reaches. I don't even expect that of seniors when we start senior year, because their list is still very much a fluid process. But ultimately, a good, healthy college list as we're moving through senior year is going to have probables, targets, and reaches. Probables are what you probably know, and I knew when I went through this, as safeties. We don't use that word. Nothing is safe in this process, but they have a high probability of getting in. So they're looking at their overall academic profile is going to be higher, that or higher than the average admitted student at that school. Targets are kind of 50-50 shot of getting in. They match up really well with the typical admitted student, and I think we know what reaches are. Reaches are dream schools. Those are like, I'm going to throw it out and see what sticks. And that's where we're applying to uber selective schools. And ultimately, not too many of those. Those are the students I got to pull back down to reality, keep a foot on the ground. We cannot apply to a heavy list of reaches, because that's going to result in a heavy list of rejections. So probables, targets, and reaches, even third of the list, a third of each. Now, how many? I'll get into this probably more in senior year, because right now I'm fine with them just tossing around a bunch of names. But the average here, you might have seen it on our snapshot, usually hovers between about 8 to 10 schools. I absolutely have a handful of seniors who've applied to more than 20 colleges. That's a lot of work, and that's a lot of money. Colleges do have application fees that will add up quickly. I have a couple students who apply to 3 or 4. And when I sit with those students, I just look at them, make sure those 3 or 4 schools are schools where they have a really, really good chance of getting in. But most of our students are hovering in that 2 to 3, 2 to 4 probables, targets, and reaches each category, and a healthy college list. So that's a pretty common thing we're doing through junior year and into senior year, is really looking over a list and going, is this a good balance? That's a tough thing to determine too. That's why I say I don't expect this junior year, because we need data. We need to see how they finished junior year, how the overall grades came out, the courses they're taking senior year. That is a significant part of a college application review. What are you taking senior year? We don't have the grades because it's in progress when we're applying, but what did you decide to push yourself with senior year? And then, of course, if they have scores, we want to see their test scores. So it's really hard to organize a list and tell a student, you're good, you got enough probables, enough targets and reaches, till we see all the data. So we don't really get into that categorizing until senior year. Unless I'm sitting with a junior who's like, I know I'm getting all A's, I'm going to finish this year with this GPA, I already tested, here's my score. We have something to work with, but that's not many. And then we always prioritize fit over ranking. I actually pushed into
3 freshman tech tools study halls classes yesterday and today, and I did this very, very bullet with them as we talked about early college planning with freshmen, and they're kind of looking at me dazed. But we say, you gotta, no rankings, guys. You can't look at who's winning championships. You can't look at who's on ESPN. You can't look at, I want the top 20 engineering. That does not have a place in this process. I'm sure you've heard U.S. News and World Report and all the big financial agencies that rank best value and best this and best that. The best are going to be the toughest schools in the world, not in the country, in the world to get into. So I will say, though, I want to think we've done a pretty good job here of toning this down, because when I first started here, 2008, I was getting requests left and right from parents. And I think it's a culture shift for us, too, in how we approach this process all the time. Mrs. Nectarline, we're only looking at the top 20 engineering. So give us that, and that's what we're working with. And I go, oh, that's not going to work. That is not going to work in this process. Those are the toughest schools to get into across the globe. You're fighting for spots with the most talented students from the globe. I haven't gotten a request like that in years. I think we're doing all right. When the U.S. News World Report magazine comes, and it comes to me twice a year, it has a very special place in a bright blue bin that sits beside my desk. I thumb through it, but rankings are a bunch of college presidents and provosts competing against one another. They don't have a place in the way we do this dialogue at Hunterdon Central. We talk about fit in 3 dimensions: academic, social, financial. And we'll talk about this a little bit with our juniors, but I find it'll probably come up more in individual meetings, because these are personal things. Where do you socially fit in? Where are you going to find your people? Academic and financial fit are pretty straightforward. Can you afford the school without going into mountains of debt? Can you get in and be successful without spending your whole weekend buried in books? Because there's so much more to college than that. We want them to fit academically and be appropriate. We want them to be affordable. Social fit is tricky. That's a really tricky one. So we'll talk about that a lot with students and say, like, what do you like? What do you like to talk about? What kind of things get you going? And I think about where I've been, the campuses I've been on, where our counselors have been, and we just had on Tuesday our annual Alumni Day. We brought back alumni from the class of 24 to talk with our current juniors and seniors about their experiences, and I'm listening and going, oh, it's a bit of a shift at that school, or that's new at that school, just to hear what their experiences are like. So we always push fit over ranking. We encourage you to stay away from the rankings and really just drive home that your child is going to be most successful. Students, you will be most successful where you fit the best. So let me show you a little bit of score. This is kind of fun. I'm going to log into we have a couple student kind of test accounts that we play around in. So SCORE, like I said, they were introduced to it in freshman year. We can see how many times they've used it. So no lying, juniors. We know if you've been in there. They will all log in at some point in their group session with us next week. Let me just tell you about these groups, because I keep talking about them. Monday through Thursday, because the students have a 4-day week next week. They're off next Friday. Monday through Thursday, we will see the entire junior class. They're going to be coming to this space with their counselors and I for a full block 80-minute session on college and career planning with basically the same info, just tailored to them. The slides are a little cuter too, so it's a little more appealing when they're all getting comfortable in those soft chairs that you're sitting in. You know what we're trying to do is keep them awake. But they will get the same dose of information tailored to them, and they will come with their English class. So all the English classes, even if they're in an English class that's got seniors in it, they've all been assigned. So if they're curious what day they're coming, Monday through Thursday, they can ask their English teacher. So we're going to start those on Monday. In that group, we will get into SCORE, not for very long, but we want to just remind them all how to log in and what we're doing in here. So my home screen's going to look a little bit different than a junior, just because right now I'm set up as a senior. But I just want to show you up in this tab up here, and if you're a parent wondering, how do I get in there? You can log in right into your student's account. They can just share their password with you, and you can save it on your browser, or you can request from their counselor a parent add-on. They can add you onto their account. But I'm just going to go up here to this Discover. This is just basic college searching. You can do a search of colleges on countless websites. The ones that we suggest the most, obviously SCORE, because that's our software, and I'd say our second suggestion would be College Board. College Board, because it's familiar to students, because they're the ones that run the PSAT and the SAT, and they're already going to be pushed into the College Board account. So College Board, there's a sector of College Board called Big Future. That's College Board's college planning section. They obviously will go into College Board to obtain PSAT scores, SAT scores, things like that. But Big Future is where College Board has all of their planning, and you can do a search in there too. So we just go in here, we can just start playing around, four-year colleges. I'm going to start to filter some things out a little bit. So we can go in and pick a major, anything that the student has in mind. You can narrow that down even more. We're looking at engineering schools that are four-year schools. And now we get into some of this fun stuff. So students sometimes have an idea, like I want a medium-sized school. This might be too overwhelming, so we'll play around here in a medium-sized school. Maybe they've lived their whole life here in Hunterdon County and Flemington or surrounding town, and they're ready for something different, so they put city. The distance, this is kind of fun. So we just put in our zip code. And this is really cool. They really break it down. It's very student friendly. I want to be close, like someone's knocking on the door for dinner, or maybe here. No, they're out of here. So, but this is where I think a lot of our students tend to start. The really wild ones start picking this too. So we'll just throw it in there for fun. And then we get into really specific stuff. This is great. Locations. So I'll just leave that blank for now. Admissions. You can talk about what level of selectivity. We always love schools that take the Common App, but you don't have to click that. And you just keep going. There's just, student life, if they want Greek life, or they want to be able to do sports or something like that. And I've got 80 matches. And I did that really quick without really thinking. And now we've got something to work with. We've got engineering schools that might be in cities, and we just play around with it, okay? And we find one. So I'm actually going to go over to my colleges. Now, we want them to be working in that section, in my colleges. If they see a school they like, this Richmond, that sounds interesting, I'm going to follow that one, and they save it, that school's now going to appear on their My Colleges list. So I'm following right now 22 schools, and that's fine. If you're a junior and you've got 30, 40 on there, that's fine. If you're a junior and you have 0 on there, that's fine. It's okay to be anywhere right now. That's what next week's for, is to kick it off, assuming everyone's in a different place. We're going to start everyone at the basics, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and pick Delaware. I want to show you guys really the power of SCORE and what it does. So here's Delaware. This is a school I'm following. I'm going to open up Delaware's full page on SCORE. Some of the schools on SCORE do have these really cool virtual tools. You can kind of get a glimpse of campus. This is very nice. You can go right to the school's official website. But we really spend most of our time on SCORE in this center section called admissions. This is where our data is, our school's data. You can learn academics, cost, all that good stuff. But I'm going to click here just for the essence of time tonight and show you how to read this page, because this is when we have families and students go into SCORE, this tends to be what they're going in for. SCORE has housed all of our schools' admissions data. Now, SCORE is used up the road at North. It's got their data in it. This is pertaining to our students. So this right here is general admissions information for UDEL. This is not our school's rate. The overall admit rate there is 65%. That's per Delaware. They've provided that to SCORE, with an average SAT of admitted students of a 1280 and an ACT of a 29. All right, so we got a baseline, but we want to see what it looks like for our kids, for Hunterdon Central, because when our students apply to college, they are evaluated in the context of their high school. They're not compared to kids from other high schools. They're compared to one another from here. So don't you want to see how our students before you have done? So now we're going to go down here. I swear they change this look like every week, and I have to navigate it. So let's go in here. We're going to play around with some years. I'm going to just look at the last 3 cycles, the class of 22, 23, and 24. 3 classes of data, okay? Those students average that got into UDEL from Central averaged a 3.85 weighted GPA. It's always going to be weighted, with an 1180 SAT. So a little bit lower than the national average, because now we're looking at our school, but a pretty similar admit rate. So now we can get an even better glimpse of what that looks like. I am the purple star. So your students are going to be in SCORE with a GPA attached to them. The GPA in SCORE should represent the GPA they had at the end of sophomore year, because we don't have any new GPAs yet. GPAs will be updated after the first semester for representing any class they finished, because GPAs are only representing completed courses. But right now, that purple star is representing my current GPA and my current test score. They'll only have a test score in SCORE if they've taken an SAT or ACT. That's where I fall. Now, looking at this little key down here, So I always ask the students, so what are my chances? What are my chances of getting into UDEL? I'm surrounded by a lot of green, so I'd say it's pretty good. We can turn on the acceptance heat map, and you can see I'm not only that, I'm placed in the green. So this tells me I have a pretty good shot of getting in to University of Delaware. It's not a shoo-in, it's not a definite, but you can get an idea as the GPAs go down and the scores go down, you could see that's where our red triangles are. So students have the ability, juniors, so you're probably wondering, how does my junior know if it's a probable, it's a target, it's a reach? This is how they're gonna find that out, and that's just one tool. We'll talk about other tools with them next week, about looking at the college's admitted freshman class profile, the whole incoming freshman class. What did they look like on a more global scale? But this is one place they can start. I could probably do a full night program on SCORE. I love it, I play around in it all day, but encourage your students to use it. This is gonna be the real driver of the next year and a half for them. All right, so again, if you are watching from home, I'm gonna be taking a break here shortly. All of our slides have a link at the bottom. It is case sensitive. That's where you can submit a question if you're tuning in from home, and we'll take questions here at the end. But folks, that is our starting point. So don't overwhelm yourself like, oh my gosh, we got to do it all right now. You're literally starting with the understanding of what a college is looking for. It's a lot of things, and your sons, daughters, children are going to have strength in some and not in others, and that's okay. We package well here in senior year, and then we're just going with the basics. We're just building a list. That's all you need to be doing right now. As we move through the year, these things are going to start to come up, and these are probably things you've heard about. We're going to hear from our grade level team now on all of these topics. Nothing here that's overwhelming. You don't have to run out and do any of this right now, because we don't want you to be stressed out about this process. There's time. The fact that you're here tonight listening from home or watching this in a couple weeks, you're in a good place, all right? So I'm going to turn it over to our counselors. They're each going to take a couple slides, and I'll be back at the end to close this up. All right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Devlin. I'm one of the junior counselors. I have the pleasure of working with a third of your students. I have to say, I've been here for a while now, over a decade, and the students that I have are some of the nicest, kindest, most respectful, inquisitive students that I've had the pleasure of working with. So I've really, enjoyed the last 2.5 years, and I'm looking forward to the next year and a half to see, what happens for everyone after they leave here. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about visiting colleges and extracurricular activities. So visiting colleges, I think this is one of the most exciting parts of the process. While time-consuming, maybe a little bit stressful with figuring out the when and the where and the how. Once you get on campus and you're walking around with your child, and I think the reality, of what's next kind of starts to set in, and I think it's a really exciting time. I've heard from some students who have started to say that they've been on campus, and they've started to do those visits. Others haven't seen a campus yet. All of that is totally fine. As Ms. Nectarline said, this is kind of like we're kicking off the process now. So one of the questions that I will often get is, where do I start with the college visits? Especially, if I don't know where I want to go, or what I want to major in, what I'm looking for, which I think is a lot of our students. New Jersey is a really great place to start. Even if your child doesn't want to go in the state of New Jersey, you can see all the different types of colleges that are out there by visiting what we have within, a 2-hour drive of Hunterdon County. So visiting a small campus, medium, large, those are all accessible to you, for a day trip. Urban, suburban, rural, from Rutgers and Stevens to CC&J and Rowan and Montclair and Rider, you can really see a variety of schools. And even if, like I said, your child knows they don't want to go or stay in the state of New Jersey, you can use the information that you gain, the feelings that you're getting on those campuses, what feels right to you, to add more of that type of college to your list. And then maybe you're like, okay, now that I have a little bit more information and know what I'm looking for, I'm willing to, start to plan that trip or figure out maybe a drive that's going to be 4 to 5 hours. I'm willing to kind of put in the time to do that. There are different ways to explore and visit campuses. To see the events that the colleges are offering, the best place to start is going to be that college's website. It's going to be all the most updated, accurate information about open houses, campus tours, info sessions, all of that. Well, you can certainly just drive through campuses on your own, which is encouraged and is an easy way to just kind of see a campus, a quick snapshot. I want to encourage you to also put in that effort. It's worth making the time to register for the events, attend the sessions, participate in those student-led tours, if you have the time and are able to do so. As Ms. Nectarline had noted, some of the smaller and medium-sized schools do track that interest, so that's one of the reasons to register for these events. Also, once you register and you go, they'll start communicating with you. They'll send your student emails and reaching out, and so you'll start to get that information. As you saw, SCORE has some cool virtual tours as well, really clear pictures, pretty cool to look around the campus, so don't forget about that too. Juniors get 3 excused absences. So if maybe you're not sure when to go or how to make it work, don't forget that you can use 3 days this year. You will get 3 days again next year. As seniors, they're not cumulative. So if you only use 1, you can't have 5 next year. But use those. Something to note is get a letter from college admissions when you're there. Bring that back and give that to our House Secretary, Ms. Krug, so that she knows, that was one of your days and it will certainly be excused. Make sure when you are visiting these campuses, don't be afraid. Students, don't discourage your parents from asking all those questions. Don't be afraid, yourself to raise your hand and ask maybe the hard questions, the things that you can't find on the website. Stay after the tour, stay after the info session, do your own exploring, go to a cafe, go to an intramural game, see what it's like what these students are doing, how they're enjoying their day. That's all super valuable as well. And finally, don't forget to take notes and video and pictures because it will start to blur together, after the 3rd or 4th visit. Where was that? Which school was that? Which campus was that? It's super helpful to have the ability to reference back to those notes and those pictures. Okay, extracurricular activities. One of those, as Ms. Nectarline said, one of those soft factors that colleges consider when looking at your overall application. This is a really fun topic to talk about with students. Some students are doing some really cool things, and I love just hearing about their different interests and their hobbies and their jobs and all their activities, and that's just a really fun thing to hear about, and colleges really want to hear that information too. They want to know, what your student is doing every day when the bell rings at 2:03. As was mentioned, extracurricular activities are not just the things that are offered here at Hunterdon Central. So it's not just the sports, it's not just the clubs. There are other things that are equally as valuable and important that our students are doing, from caring for loved ones and providing childcare, helping with the family business, starting your own business. I've had students who have they were reselling shoes on eBay, which was amazing. I have another student who was, visiting all these craft fairs throughout New Jersey and selling, the art that they had made. So students are doing some really, really cool things. But it's not just that, it's also just some of the personal, hobbies that students are doing on their own. So maybe your student is taking a coding class. They're really into painting, so they're painting in their free time. They're working on cars, they're working on their neighbors' cars and their family's cars. That is all super valuable and all has a place on a college application. Like I said, all of these activities, extracurriculars, we will find a way to make it fit, and as Ms. Nectarline said, kind of package it right. They all show responsibility, commitment. They show work ethic, values, all of that stuff. So we want to make sure that shines. So quality over quantity is a super important point to remember. It matters more that a student has committed to a couple things. They're more involved. Maybe they've stuck with something, over time, like they've had a job at ShopRite for 3 years, or, they have a leadership role in a club that they've been in since they were a freshman. That matters more than signing up, for 8 clubs and barely attending and not having much to say about it when you go, to fill out your Common Application. So start to think about how your child is spending their time. The Common App will ask for this, and they'll ask for it as like hours per week and weeks per year type of format. You can start now by using SCORE. They have, there is a place in SCORE to track what you're doing what your child is doing, and it has the same format. So it's also like hours per week and weeks per year. So that's something to do now to start to get prepared. I'm going to turn it over to Miss Isabella.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Isabella Murin, and I am the newest member of this team. I have the beginning of the alphabet, and I'm going to just echo what Jacqueline mentioned. While I'm new here, I do have a lot of experience doing this, and I have to say that the class of 2026, in my experience here so far, is just lovely. I'm really getting excited about just getting to know them more on a deeper level now that I've been here for just about a year. It's just a really nice group, and I'm really enjoying meeting with all of them. So I have to just echo what she said, and they really, really are a great bunch of kids. So I'm going to talk a little bit about letters of recommendation and the counselor letter. So every student will get a letter from their counselor that's given. So it's really important that we're going to talk to them about this next week in a little more detail, but that letter is really going to be us talking about them as a whole. Who are they as a student here at Central? And more so, who are they as a person? What are they passionate about? We're going to speak to their character and what they're like and what they like to do and what's important to them. So, and the way that we do that, and it's what's unique, not necessarily unique to Central, but something that's really nice here is that the counselors do get to track with the students. So we get to know them the longer that we're with them. So in addition to that, we're going to have them fill out a brag sheet, which I'm going to pull this up here. And I won't get into too much detail. I'm just going to scan through here. But there's a portion of it that is for the student, and then there's a portion of it that's for the parents. So the more information, the better. Like I said, we're going to be writing a letter for your child. So they want to provide as much detail as possible about who they are, what they're passionate about, what are the things that they really love and what's important to them, and, how do they walk through life. So we're going to get to speak to that in our letters about them. So they will get to fill this out, and you will as the parent as well. And then we utilize this to help us write letters for them. Now, let me go back here. So, in addition to that, we're going to be talking to them about requesting letters from teachers, okay? So the brag sheet is for the counselors. We're going to encourage students to ask at least 2 teachers for letters of recommendation. So it's very important. We encourage students to talk to them in person, right? You're asking them to do a big job. They're going to be writing a letter that is academic-based, talking about who you are as a student in that subject or, class as they know you. A lot of students will come to me and ask, well, who do I ask? So in thinking about that, you should think about who is a teacher that knows me really well, that I maybe have had a relationship with, or it should be equally like thinking about too the subjects that you might be interested in, okay? So just thinking about, I think both of those things. So a teacher that knows you, and then subjects that you might be interested in. So approach teachers that can really write things about you as a student. So in addition to that, we're going to show them how to request them in the fall. And what that means is that the program that Ms. Nectarline was showing, the students in the fall will be able to request those teachers, and then the teachers will upload their letters to SCORE, and that's how we send off the letters to colleges. But we're going to ask students to start thinking about the teachers that they want to ask this year, and we'll encourage them to start asking in the spring. So another thing, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, you want to check each college recommendations requirements. So Ms. Nectarline had mentioned that not all schools accept letters of recommendation. So you want to just pay attention to the schools. And the Common App a lot of times will say what schools accept letters of recommendation and what don't. Now, if you're not sure of teachers to ask, we're going to encourage students to come and talk to us so we can help them find someone to write letters for them. In addition, some students ask if they can request a letter from somebody outside of school. That's important to them. We will talk to them next week about that in more detail. So I think that's it with letters of recommendation. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about standardized testing. So Ms. Nectarline had mentioned a little bit about standardized testing, and as you may or may not know, the students have already taken the PSAT this year. They will not be taking the PSAT again from this point on. You should have received the scores for that. They were, you can access them on your College Board account. If for some reason you're having trouble or haven't been able to view them, you could always reach out to us or have your child come see us if you would like to see the scores and the breakdown of that report. But everyone should have received their scores at this point. So talking a little bit about the SAT and the ACT. Ms. Nectarline was mentioning test optional. However, most of our students do opt to take the SAT. And it is something that colleges do consider for admissions and merit-based scholarships. You can, the other thing that is important to think about and the benefit to taking the SAT is we encourage students, if you're able, to take the SAT twice, because the SAT and College Board, if you take the SAT the first time and you knock it out of the park in English, and then you take it a second time and you do much better in the math section. certain colleges will super score and take your 2 highest scores from the test. So we do encourage students, if they're able, to take the test more than once. A lot of students do take it at least twice. And you can look at which, I'm going to pull up this FAIR test website after I talk a little bit about the ACT. So we can look at, it's a website that shows you which schools are still test optional and which are not. And as Ms. Nectarline was mentioning, we can also talk to your children about how they should be looking at their test scores when they are applying to colleges. So it is important that when you are looking at your transcript and you're looking at that data and score, especially, the averages for accepted students with SAT scores and with GPA, if your test score isn't quite matching what the average accepted rate is for SATs, then you might not want to send in your test scores. But if your GPA matches, that might be something that we want to consider just sending your transcript. So certainly things that they can come and talk to us about, and we can, really look at the data to see, what makes sense for them related to their SAT scores. The ACT is also a test that is optional for students to take. We more commonly see students taking the SAT, but the ACT is another test that certain colleges accept as an admissions path or for merit-based scholarships as well. The ACT offers a little more time for students to take, and it has a science and reading section and an optional essay, where the SAT is like reading, writing, and math in just larger sections and a little less time to take the test. So it's just something that, another test that you can consider taking as well. We don't offer the ACT here, unlike the SAT, but it is offered for students several times throughout the year. And I just wanted to mention, too, that SAT, I don't want anyone to panic if you haven't taken the SAT yet. I've had a lot of students say to me, I haven't taken it yet. I didn't take it back in December. What are the dates? There are a lot of offered SAT dates before that first deadline for next year. So there will be an SAT in March, in May, in June, in August, and then also they just added a date in September. So juniors have plenty of opportunities to still take the SAT or take it more than once. And then I just want to pull up FAIR Test. So this is a website that is it's updated regularly. We're still seeing a lot of schools that are test optional, and this is a website that you can utilize and search for schools that are test optional and see which schools are not test optional. So it's a good way to weigh your options when you're considering taking the SAT and which schools you're applying to. And now I'm going to pass it on to Miss Blake.
No worries. Got it. So I actually am going to kind of hustle through this because I have a lot to share with you tonight. I want to thank you very much for coming out on a cold night because it's hard. But this is important information. Scheduling is coming up, and it's actually going to be open up a week from tomorrow, and that's for seniors. So you have 5 days all the way to the following Wednesday to register for your classes. For the classes that you have all been wanting to get into, maybe didn't get into, if you haven't been aware of it, you need to pay attention to that window because you have the first bite at the apple this year. Congratulations, it's a new year, you guys are the top of the heap. So congratulations to you all. That being said, what we want to talk about a little bit is that you guys are going to schedule just like you've always done, and that we meet with you after you've scheduled. We can always make changes. We can always add and subtract things, and we'll have conversations about your goals, your thoughts about rigor and what's appropriate for you. We will have all of those conversations, so don't panic if you don't feel like you have the right thing in place. We will work together always, and we have scheduling meetings all the way through mid-March. That being said, Mrs. Nectarline alluded to this, and I really want people to be aware that it is your black belt year. And while everyone wants to kind of relax, and everybody's heard of senioritis, and everyone knows that it is hard to keep motivated once you've gotten into college, colleges do care about what you're doing because it's the last time. The only thing between you and senior year and your freshman year of college is a summer at the shore, right? You're not doing a lot, unless you're doing beach reading, there's not a lot of education. So this is the last bit of your education that's free, right? And it's here. So what we're going to ask you to do is think balance. You are going to have senioritis. We get senioritis. Everybody does, all right? We honor that, but we also know that you need to have rigor in your schedule. So we're going to have those conversations with you. If you've been in all academic classes, maybe if you've been getting A's and B's in those classes, it's time to lift it up to some college prep classes. If you've been in college prep and you've been getting A's and B's, even a C in a different subject or two, maybe we want to try an honors. If you've been doing all honors and getting B's and you've been working really hard, maybe we stay there. It depends on the student, where they are and what they're doing. The last thing we want to do is for you to think and hear these rules and think that they are blanket rules for everyone. Everyone is different, and everyone has an appropriate place of where to challenge and where not to. I did want to just say a couple things about the letters of recommendation. We will have conversations with your children. If your children are doing very specific fields like engineering or business, there may be a letter of recommendation that may be specific to that. So engineering, you want a quantitative probably or a science recommendation. I just wanted to put that in your brain because asking a cooking teacher for a recommendation and going to engineering school may not be the appropriate thing. We want to make sure that you're aware that we're having those conversations, all right? The next thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit about supporting your child through this process. This, to me, is one of the hardest things to do as a parent because you don't know what you're supposed to be doing to help your children, right? Are you supposed to be pushing them to do things, backing off, somewhere in between, and what does that look like? And I found as a parent who, my husband works at a college, I have been in college admissions for a long time, even I really struggled. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what's appropriate. And what I really want you to recognize is that we here at this school have been working with your children for almost 2.5 years on research-based decision-making. Your classes that they're taking, social studies, history classes, English classes, math classes, we are asking them to do work to figure out and to think on their own. This process is not dissimilar from that. We want them to do research and make their decisions about the appropriate schools and the appropriate places to go based on their research, knowing themselves and knowing what is out there. So our job as professionals at the school and you as parents is to but to encourage self-advocacy. Your job as a parent is to say, you're 1.5 years away from going on and being on a campus with a whole bunch of other 18-year-olds to 22-year-olds, and you're going to be making decisions on your own. I'd like to see how you think. So the way that we do that is to kind of play Columbo, if you know what I mean. So when you start asking your child, what is it they said, or you know the answer already, right? Because we've been there or done that, or maybe we don't know. But what you want to do is, what do you think? Those questions are going to ask them about the next thing to do. If they don't know when the application is due, you're going to say, well, I don't know. Where do you think we can get that information, right? Encourage them to Google, call, talk to their counselor. Your job is perhaps not to do it for them. And I know that's a hard thing to do when and when we know that they're struggling with that, all right? The last thing we want to do is inappropriately place responsibility on them, but this is where you can both be supportive and encouraging. And that's it's a hard balance to make, but we're all there. One of the things that goes with that is recognizing that this is the first time that your children probably are thinking that they are going to be publicly evaluated. We see their transcripts, the schools will see their transcripts, I'm gonna see their writing, the schools are gonna see their writing. You know, it's a very vulnerable time for these kids. And recognizing that they are going through a period of their life where they are sharing everything that they've done up to now and be thinking about that is hard. It's hard at 16, it's hard at 30. So knowing that they're going through this kind of stressful exposure to the admissions officers, or perhaps even Mrs. Nectarline, they're like, I have a transcript I'm a little nervous about showing. And Mrs. Nectarline is like, no, this is great, but that may be the first time that they're showing it to somebody outside their family or their own personal counselor. These are hard times, so what we really want to do is protect them. And protect them from the sense of that they're doing wrong. One of the big pictures with college admissions, and I will talk to my students ad nauseum about, is that colleges don't care what you don't do, what you have failed at. What they want are your assets. This whole process is about sharing what you like, what you're good at. It's not to create a list of what you're not good at. So if you can be thinking about that with your child and thinking about what they're good at and reminding them of what they're good at, that's the positive, because it really is about asset recognition. Your children, maybe they're not, the strongest math student, but they really like to talk about the news. They're really political, or they really like sports, and they really get deep into the numbers. All of those things, or they're musicians or dancers, and they spend hours and hours of their time really focused on that, and they help their friends talk about that with them and remind them of how great they are, because they are. It's just they're vulnerable. So I really want you to know that that's part of our role here, but it's also a really wonderful thing for a parent to do and to remember, because this is not a process about what you're not doing, it's about what you do. What is your job as a parent of a child applying for college? Well, unfortunately, we're all responsible for the financial aspect of it and financial aid. So next year, when there's a financial night and how to fill out the FAFSA night, I do ask that you be, aware of that and know that that is your role. So that you, despite the fact that when your child goes to college, you no longer have access to their grades and you no longer have access to what goes on in the classroom, you can't call a professor and say, how are they doing? You are going to be asked to fill out the FAFSA and to pay that bill, right? So that is one of the things that you're responsible for. The other thing is, this is something that I encourage every parent to do, we all encourage, is to have the money talk with your child. If your family has saved some money for college and this is all you're doing, or you haven't saved money at all, and it's really going to be up to them and loans, and maybe you really have to have an honest conversation with them about what the expectations that they should have about what they're responsible for. We will share all kinds of great advice and kinds of rules of thumb about how much money should be taken out in loans, just general rules that are out there. But you as a family are all different, and you all have different approaches to education. You all have different approaches to what you've saved or not saved, or what it's like. Please be aware that there are very good net cost calculators on every college site. Rutgers, I think, has the best one because you don't need to have huge data. I compared New Jersey Institute of Technology versus Rutgers. Rutgers is just easy peasy, and you can get a sense of what you would be, if you would estimate your family. Now, every college has that, but that one's just easy, so you can see what your family might be responsible for. Essays. Some students, every child is different. Is okay with their parents being involved in reading essays. What we do ask is that this essay has to be from the child, and the child should have their voice, and what colleges are looking for with those essays is how does a child think? So what we ask that if you are part of that process of reading an essay, read it from the perspective of a generic admissions officer. And think of it, you could be a 22-year-old admissions officer, just a recent grad, or you can be a 78-year-old reading that, right? We're all very different. And so you need to remember that the audience is a big audience for that essay. And your job is to kind of say, hey, I read this, and again, you can play Columbo. I don't really quite understand what you're trying to say here, and you make it generically. Now, some students, some of your children may be uncomfortable having you read it. They should not have people read it. Have many sets of eyes on it. We want to catch, some grammar mistakes. It's okay to, hey, this is a run-on sentence. You need to fix this. That's absolutely appropriate, right? And then they need to go back and fix it. But essays, are a place where you can be helpful or be an asset for them. Organization. Organization is a great way to help your child. And that can be as simple as, I don't know if you guys are getting inundated with college materials, but my husband and I, when we had piles of it, and how did we manage to use our time as parents? Well, we bought a file folder, and we labeled everything, and we filed everything by college. My kids never looked at it. We threw it out later. But it made us feel really good and like we were doing something. So if you need something to do, go to Staples and get your file folder and file all that stuff, okay? Because that'll keep you busy. Plan college visits. Obviously, that's something that is going to be your schedule, your time, your money, and you're going to be part of that. Be the cheerleader, and respect their decisions. Obviously, that's a hard thing to do. The other piece the piece of advice I can suggest is remember the vulnerability that they have during this time. They're also being inundated with college, and from here until probably later this time next year, it's going to be all college all the time. And whether it's Aunt Susie asking where are you going to college over this summer before they've even applied, or you saying did you talk to your teacher? Did you do this? Did you do that? They are overwhelmed. So one of the rules that my son made for me was that I was only allowed to speak to him about college on Sundays. I had a window of an hour to ask if he'd done this, that, and that actually worked for our family. Because what happened was I had that window, but I never had to use that window because he came to me. I was very lucky. He was like, he'd always say, hey, what do you think? But what I wasn't doing wasn't peppering him with questions and inundating him and overwhelming him. So if you just remember what it's like to be really vulnerable and scared about what's going on, you don't know where you're going, what you're doing, you're not sure about what major you want to do, you're not even sure you want to go to college. We're cheerleaders. All right, so I just wanted to share that with you because I feel like this is such a good time, but it's also it's a little bit of a scary time for kids sometimes. All right, and then I think we have Jen is back. What? I think this was you. I'm sorry. Oh, you're good. Did you?
All right, Screw, you got this one? Yeah. All right. Aren't they great? Round of applause for our grade level team. That was wonderful. So I'm probably a little closer to this process than my colleagues, Ms. Isabella Murin and Mrs. Devlin, but Julie's our in-house expert, having put hers through it. But I just absorbed all that as I navigate the teen years. So no, I've been working with, Julie's been here a little longer than myself, so we've been working together for 17 years, and I have stolen that piece of advice and given it in every single night program because it just makes sense, and now I'm using it. I use it with my own children on certain topics about just talking about this. Pick a time, and I will reiterate that in senior year because then it's. I mean, when Julie says it's really coming at them, it's going to come at them a lot in the later part of this calendar year. So I really encourage you to think about a time to talk about this. And I just want to jump back because Julie mentioned this. The organization, I do know mail comes, but I cannot begin to tell you how important it is for them to find a method to organize their email. Because once they sign up for one thing, it's like all of a sudden there's tons. And the vast majority of students, when students are in my office meeting with me, the type of meetings I do here at Central, oftentimes a Chromebook is open. I get up from my desk, I peek around, I have a little desk for students to work at right across from me, because a lot of my meetings are they're working meetings, and I take a peek at their inbox and my heart rate goes up. I go, oh, that's a lot of unread messages. And that's how they are. I mean, we're different. We grew up through email and being a significant part of our professional experience, but I would highly encourage them if they're like, I am not even looking at that school. Why are they bothering me? Unsubscribe. Have an unsubscribing party and get off the list so that they're not being inundated with schools and information that just doesn't pertain to their goals. So that was kind of our our main content there. What I want to do now is just go through, and I'm bouncing around here. I apologize. Again, if you're listening from home, questions are coming in. We've got the link. We've got 2 more slides, and then we're going to go right into some Q&A to round out the evening. We know that we have juniors who, a lot of what we said, maybe you're sitting here tonight, a lot of what we said are things like, we're doing that. Check that. We've done some visits where, my student knows that they want to ask for letters. We're taking the SAT. You're really moving through this. Maybe you came to early college planning night, took in a lot of the info, and you're moving further and thinking, well, what's next? We want to keep going. These are kind of our next level topics. So perhaps you have a student who's going to be a recruited athlete. That's going to be brought up in an individual meeting. That would be with the counselor or myself. Maybe your student has the working college list and is like, I want more. Tell me how to start getting ready to craft those applications, to craft the right kind of essay. Maybe they want to talk about, well, what is early action? I've got my list, but how do I get on this process through spring and summer? They're just a little further ahead. This is kind of our group of topics that we're going to bring up when we meet with juniors in the spring. So we will hit home with our students who might be getting recruited. We will talk about, not on here, but I want to mention it, our students who will be going through the application process with the visual and performing arts piece attached. So they're looking at theater majors, art majors, and they're going to have a portfolio or an audition. We'll get into that layer of things. We will talk more about the essay and starting to actually put together applications when we meet with juniors in the spring. We'll get into what is early action, early decision, what does all that mean? Should I do that? And then we'll also, in the spring, give them a glimpse of summer and fall. So we're not piling too much on tonight. We are sticking back with that main content you heard from me about how to get started and what you heard from our grade level team about those specific topics like visiting, activities, focusing on what's important, what they can really be managing and working on right now as juniors. So here's just a little bit more, a couple dates. So this is definitely, and this is all going to be on our website, but I want to go over a couple of dates. So we will see the whole junior class next week, Monday through Thursday, and it is a 4-day week for students. Juniors will be assigned, every group will be identical, no advantage to their English class coming on Monday versus Thursday, and we will have a good pep in our step all the way through Thursday, even though we'll have been repeating the same presentation 12 times, we're ready for it, and we're ready for them. So, and it's like I said, it's an 80-minute presentation, so it's a lot of information. We keep them moving. We save time for questions. We could have anywhere from 30 to 60 students a block, depending on how many sections are assigned to that block. But they do ask questions, so it should be a good week, a good 4 days. You mentioned, we heard about scheduling. Scheduling begins the 25th, the 29th. Am I right? 2 more weeks. What am I looking at? I have that wrong. It is the 24th. It's a Friday. 2 weeks from tomorrow, scheduling will open up for current juniors to schedule for next year. They will get plenty of reminders, and we will have a whole scheduling portion of our groups with them next week. So they're going to want to start thinking about that schedule and that window of time to put that in Genesis. The counselors meet with their students after that. Okay, that will be reminded to juniors next week. They're not going to get a meeting between now and January 24th to meet with their counselor to go over, what do I put in? This is the time to take the driver's seat and put a schedule in. In the meeting that's going to happen somewhere between late January all the way through February, March, they're going to get a one-on-one meeting with their counselor to go over what was put in. That's when changes can be made. So don't fear, changes can be made, okay? A little bit more about some college and career events coming up. Thursday, February 20th, that will be a virtual program. We'll all be doing that from home. I will be hosting our admissions panel. We do this every year, sometime in the winter or spring, where we bring together admission deans and directors from a variety of institutions to come on a kind of a Zoom webinar panel where I moderate and ask them questions about this process. So now you get to hear great advice from people on the other side. It is one of my favorite events. You can tune in live. It will be live streamed. There'll be a webinar link that goes out a couple times to juniors, families, parents. We even invite our sophomores and freshmen to that, and it will be recorded if you can't make it that night. However, if there's a date to save, it's March 18th. Tuesday, March 18th is the annual Hunterdon County College Fair. Anybody attend that with their sophomore or their freshman? Yeah, it's a big one. We host the only college fair in Hunterdon County in the spring right here at Central. It will take up our commons and our whole 11-12 campus hallways
stays right on this level. We are anticipating about 150 colleges. It is a one-night event, 6:30 to 8:30. It's 2 hours. We send out a lot of information about how to get ready for an event like that, what students should be doing. They do need to register for the event through a program called Strive Scan, where they enter a little basic information about themselves. It takes them a minute to register, and they're provided with a barcode. And they come to the fair with their mobile device and their personal barcode, and that's how they connect with schools. So the schools will have their phone, and then they'll be scanning each other. And after the fair, they get a full report of every college they scanned with, all about the schools and contact info. It's fantastic. Outside of that, though, it's a one-stop shop night. It's a night to go around, talk with different representatives, get information, literature. It's a pretty packed event. We usually get about 800 to 1,000 attendees at that, and we welcome students from other nearby high schools. So those are our two big events for juniors in the spring months. There'll be a financial aid night next year, a senior college planning night next year, all of that in the senior year. In late May, we'll do our second round of student groups. We'll see all juniors again, go over those more specific topics. Those will be shorter groups. We'll knock those out in about 2 days, but it'll kind of be like we theme it like Get Set for Summer. So we're reiterating some of the things that we worked on with them all through second semester and getting them ready for what's to come. And then there's meetings with myself. So the next 2 months, all of the three counselors and Ms. Cordova, our multi-language learner counselor, will be meeting with every student in their caseload to do scheduling. College may come up in there a little bit, but they are moving pretty quickly through those meetings to get everyone in through scheduling. And then there can always be a follow-up about college. Starting probably the first week of February, after we get through the semester changeover and students get into their new classes, I have a few juniors who will find their way in there late January, but I will open up my calendar to start meeting with juniors by request, and all they have to do is email me. I'll talk with juniors more about that next week, what that looks like, what I ask of them before they come in to meet with me. Only because the way I manage the volume of serving the student body is I want to see juniors who have put something into this process. So prior to meeting with me, I'll ask them 4 to 5 pre-meeting questions. They're pretty basic, but it tells me that they are underway. They have a working college list, they have some criteria, they have some actual points they want to talk about with me. If they're not prepared to answer those, they're going back to our resources. They're going back to what we share with them next week, and they're going to start the groundwork of building this process up. So I will see a lot of them from February to June. Some aren't ready in February, and they don't want to dive into the discussion. But for our juniors who the ball has been rolling and they're really ready to go, they're coming in. I want to know what they're coming in with, what we're going to talk about. And usually I'd like you to look at my working list and tell me I'm on the right track. I'd like to talk with you about a couple majors. That meeting can be initiated by the parent, but I will tell you that I'm going to write to your student and say, your parent initiated the meeting. Here's the pre-meeting questions for you to answer. So your student can reach out to me, parent can reach out to me. Ideally, I'd like to hear from the student, but parents are absolutely welcome with any of our meetings to talk about this process. But it's not uncommon for parents to join in the junior college planning meeting. All right. We went just a little over. We'll do maybe 8 to 10 minutes of questions. If there's anything I can answer in the audience, for those of you still tuning in from home, I know some of you are still live. I will repeat it so you can hear it. But I do have a few in my submissions. But is there anything I can answer for anyone just as we kind of close out here tonight? Thank you all for sticking around. This is great. Anything at all? Yeah, go right ahead.
Other colleges that accept both, that they take both the Common App and their own tool app, or?
Great question. So the question was about Common App. The Common App is going to be, there we go. I want to be able to see my questions on my screen. The question was about Common App, who takes it, who does it. So the Common App is taken by over 1,000 colleges. It is our predominantly used application. It is I make a 5-page comprehensive guide on how to fill it out. I would say that we have like a tiny handful of schools that don't accept the Common App that we work with, but it's becoming like under a dozen that we really, really work closely with. So Common App is going to be our go-to platform. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. The question is, are there schools that take both? Yes, there are colleges that are exclusive Common App users. It's their only app. And then there's schools who have up to 3 or 4 different methods to apply. the benefit is going to be the ease of application by using Common App. We are going to push Common App and we usually don't even need to because our students, it's kind of in our culture here. When a college accepts the Common App, you use it because why would you fill out a whole other platform? The Common App takes work. This is something these students are going to work on in a perfect world from June on. It's a process, but the guide we make is very, very comprehensive. So Common App is our go-to. Great question. Yes, okay. Yes.
You didn't mention anything about attendance affecting the college application process or acceptance criteria. Like if our child had a medical issue or was frequently out for certain things, how much does that play into it, even if they have good grades or anything like that?
Sure. So the question was about if there was like any attendance matters in high school, or maybe if there was like an extended leave of time, and we absolutely have students who have that. That would only be known by the college if the student, I'm so sorry, I have a glare and I can't see, would only be known by the college if the student let them know. Our transcripts, our official school transcript does not report attendance. Now, if the grades were impacted by a medical leave or a transfer in, a transfer out, at that point in time, we would discuss individually with the student about how to bring that awareness through their application appropriately. But otherwise, colleges have no idea what attendance the student had in school. Attendance is not reported anywhere to a college. But if it impacted them in a way that then it impacts their packaging of their application, we'll work individually with that student to explain that matter. Yeah. Yes? Oh, sure. Yeah. Sure. So the Common App, how do you get a head start with the Common App? The Common App is available all the time. It's not like it's open right now just for the class of 25. So I could have a junior, I could have a freshman out there who has an account. However, we put out our guide on how to fill out the Common App in June. That's done purposefully because we don't think there's a need for a junior to work on it before that. We want them to focus and put their energy on a successful junior year, completing the year. But when we meet with our juniors at the end of the school year, those like late May groups, we will introduce them to our Common App guide and tell them this is yours. You may work on this as you wish over the summer, or you can attend. I'll run probably 4 Common App workshops. 2 in person, 3 in person, all different dates in the summer. Those will come out before school ends, and then 1 hybrid, because we have some students who are not here in the summer. And so there'll be a hybrid. I'll be on Zoom running it for over that. So doing that. Students don't have to come to those. I had about 175 rising seniors at my workshops this summer, so that was a good turnout. With our comprehensive Common App guide, a student can fill it out on their own. And then as far as when we get back to school, sometimes I'll run an after-school workshop for our students who didn't work on it at all in the summer. That's on them. But you can knock out so much of the busy work of this process in the summer. So they'll get all the tools they need before we leave for summer. I'm going to take a question that I have. Somebody asked about the average SAT score at Central. That is on our school profile. So if you're on the Hunterdon Central website, there's like our main About HC. If you click in there, there is our school profile. Our school profile is kind of like we were talking about brag sheets that go to the counselor that talk about the student so they can write the letter. I kind of call our school profile our brag sheet to the world. So it's out there for people to look at that want to get to know what Hunterdon Central is all about. Anyone from an incoming family who's moving to the area to mostly colleges. Colleges are looking at the school profile to better understand the context of our high school. I can tell you though, those schools that I showed you at the beginning of the program that are receiving lots of our students, they're not looking at that. They know this high school, they know what they're getting, the quality of student they're getting out of Hunterdon Central. But maybe if I'm sending a new application to a school down south and they're wondering, well, what's Central all about? What kind of achievements do they have? They'll read our school profile. On our school profile is where you can find our school's average SAT scores, GPA, and deciles showing. We are a no-rank high school. We've been a no-rank high school all 17 years I've been here, so for quite a while. The vast majority of high-performing high schools do not provide rank, but we do provide a decile breakdown for GPA, which is not a rank, it's a decile breakdown to give colleges context of what like our top 5% would look like GPA-wise, top 10%, things like that. All of that information, including the answer to this question, what's our average SAT score, are all on our school profile. I will take one more question from here. There's several, but Does Hunterdon Central upload our students' data into SCORE? Yes. So the data in SCORE as of right now for a junior would include their GPA as of the end of sophomore year. I probably did an upload in September just to capture the most accurate GPA we could for our seniors, but that would only be if they had a slight change like from a summer course. But the GPA they ended their sophomore year with is their current cumulative GPA. I will update those again in February after we get through our first semester. And then if any test scores that they have up to now, we're fully updated. So if a junior took the SAT in December, those scores got put in the first day I came back from break. So if they're missing something in SCORE, like a standardized test score, their GPA is wrong, email the counselor or myself, and we'll look into that. Anything from the live audience that I can answer? Yes. Are students being prepared for the SAT? Well, we have an elective course, SAT prep. Yeah, we do have a class as well. I'm going to let Mrs. Blake come up.
Go to our website. I'm sorry, I'll
Yeah,
say
go
it
ahead,
right in
go ahead.
things. Right now, it's not. There's no information about a course that's being run here on Saturdays. Traditionally, we do one in the spring and one in the fall. The one in the spring has not been announced, and it may not run. So if you were planning on your child doing that course, please look for other options right now, because it probably will not be running. I can't say for certain, but right now there is no plan. So you want to look outside. Please be aware that Khan Academy has a school, it's called Schoolhouse Boot Camp. It's free, 4 weeks of twice a week, 75 minutes. And it's taught by a student who has taken the test and been trained to do this. But this is free SAT prep, and that is for March. It opens up January 23rd, and then they're going to have one for May and June. And those are some opportunities. But please remember that test prep is important, but it's time spent doing it, that all the information is out there, and that we can't recommend one versus another. It's all just the time that your child studies it was what makes the substantive difference in scores. So I just want to say that before.
There is just a question, how important is class rank for college applications? It's not. It's really the context of your high school. If you don't rank, and it's not considered. If your school does rank, it's considered. So from a context standpoint, it has no impact at all on applications. College applications, like the Common App, will ask, what is your rank? And the students will simply answer no rank, that we are a no rank high school, and that's becoming very normal. The schools take the best English and math scores from, okay, so this is about super scoring. So what do schools do? This is right on their website. Every college reports exactly how they review scores. You're either going to be a school that takes best test date. So if you take the SAT 3 times, they're taking your best test date score. Well, in that school, in that day, on that Saturday, your math might have been low, but your reading, writing was high, and that's your best overall score. But then you take it again and vice versa. So we love super scoring. I mean, we tell the students when you report out your scores, which you can do on the Common App, you're going to super score yourself. You're going to give your best reading, writing, and the corresponding date, and your best math and the corresponding date, and you're going to present your super score. You'll need to send official scores to colleges. That happens in senior year. You might have to send all your test dates, but you're always going to report out your super score. The vast majority of colleges will take your best reading, writing, your best math from across multiple test dates. So I'm going to close on that note. I ask you all, please be in touch. You can reach out to us. I will tell you, just with our groups next week, give us a little time to get through those. We will be away from our office most of the day in this space with your students, pushing this information out. We got a couple short weeks in January with some long weekends, but I can tell you, top of February, I'm going to be really going through the juniors. Encourage your students to reach out. Even if it's now, I'll get them on the calendar for then. I just don't like to, get students out of class as we're finishing a semester and things are going on. They will be so busy, our grade level team, with getting them through multiple meetings a day with scheduling, but we will get to them. We have a really exciting semester ahead with them to kick this process off. So take it all in, let it all sink in. You can certainly reach out to us with any questions, but we thank you all for coming. This was all recorded if you need to go back and reference anything. But thank you all for coming tonight. Safe travels home.